is omdat ze nu vertrokken. Hun zitten in Lord-Juntertollesing She.
Who's this old woman? Leave her, let's go!
We can't just leave her here like this. We have to do something.
Yes. The first thing people noticed about Daniel Oakry was not his wealth. It was his confidence. Daniel walked like a man who had conquered life and left no room for regret. In downtown Atlanta, his name carried weight. Boardrooms went quiet when he spoke. Business magazines described him as self-made. Motivational speakers used his story as proof that success was possible. But no one ever asked what he had to forget to become that man. On this particular afternoon, Daniel stepped out of a glass skyscraper, sunlight bouncing off his tailored suit. His phone buzzed non-stop, emails, deals, meetings, but he ignored them. His driver opened the door of the sleek black SUV, and Daniel slid into the back seat beside his wife, Amara. Amara looked flawless, as always. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect smile, reserved only for public spaces. "You were amazing in there," she said, adjusting her designer bag. "They love you." Daniel nodded. Praise no longer thrilled him. He had heard it all before. As the car pulled into traffic, Atlanta's busy streets stretched ahead, flashing lights, tall buildings, people rushing toward dreams that looked different from his own. Daniel stared out the window, lost in thought. He had come far. Far from the cramped apartment he grew up in. Far from the woman who raised him with tired hands and endless prayers. Far from his mother. Daniel rarely thought about her these days. Not because he hated her, but because thinking about her made him uncomfortable. She belonged to a chapter of his life he preferred to keep closed. A chapter filled with struggle, sacrifice, and memories that didn't match the polished image he had worked so hard to build. Amara leaned closer. "We're hosting some executives this weekend," she said. "We need everything perfect. No distractions." Daniel hummed in agreement. The car slowed as traffic thickened near an older part of the city. A stretch of road lined with small roadside stalls and aging buildings that hadn't kept up with Atlanta's glow. Daniel rarely passed through this area anymore. That was when something caught his eye. At first, it was just an elderly woman by the sidewalk. Then his chest tightened. She was bent slightly forward, walking slowly, balancing a large plastic cooler filled with bottled water and packaged snacks. Her steps were careful, deliberate, as if one wrong move could send the load crashing down. Sweat clung to her forehead despite the mild weather. Her clothes were clean but worn, familiar in a way that sent a chill through Daniel's spine. His heart skipped. "No," he whispered. The car rolled closer. There was no mistake. It was Mama Ifunanya, his mother. The woman who once stood in snow-filled bus stops just to get to work. The woman who skipped meals so he could afford textbooks. The woman who sold anything she could carry so her son wouldn't drop out of school. And there she was still carrying. Daniel's breath became shallow. His fingers curled into his palm. Amara noticed his sudden stiffness. "What's wrong?" Daniel didn't answer. She followed his gaze, then frowned. "What are you looking at?" His mother struggled as a car sped past her, splashing water from the roadside. She adjusted the cooler and kept walking, her face calm, used to this life, resigned to it. Amara scoffed softly. "Is that who I think it is?" Daniel swallowed. "Please don't slow down," Amara said quickly. "People are watching. Someone might recognize you." The driver hesitated, waiting for Daniel's command. For a moment, time froze. The city noise faded. The applause from boardrooms disappeared. The luxury around him meant nothing. It was just Daniel, and the woman who carried his past on her back. He could stop. He could step out. He could change everything. But the weight of reputation pressed harder than the weight his mother carried. Daniel looked away. "Drive," he said quietly. The car moved forward. And just like that, Daniel Oakry left his mother standing by the roadside, still carrying, still struggling, while he rode away in silence. He didn't know it yet, but that single decision was about to shake the foundation of his perfect life. The car blended back into traffic, but the image Daniel had just seen refused to fade. Inside the SUV, everything was quiet except for the low hum of the engine. The city lights flashed across the windows, yet Daniel felt as though he were sinking into darkness. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Sharp suit, calm face, controlled posture. A man who looked successful. But inside, something was breaking. Amara adjusted her seat and sighed. "You did the right thing," she said casually, scrolling through her phone. "We can't afford unnecessary scenes. People talk." Daniel didn't respond. His mind replayed the moment over and over. His mother's slow steps. The way she balanced the cooler with practiced care. The tired strength in her eyes. She hadn't begged. She hadn't called his name. She hadn't even looked at him. That hurt the most. When they reached their gated neighborhood, the iron gates slid open smoothly, welcoming them into a world of trimmed lawns, silent streets, and houses that looked more like museums than homes. The driver parked, and Daniel stepped out. The mansion stood tall and beautiful, glowing softly in the evening light. It was everything Daniel had dreamed of when he was younger. Everything he had worked for. Yet for the first time, it felt cold. Inside, the house was spotless. The air smelled faintly of expensive candles. A large portrait of Daniel and Amara hung above the staircase, both smiling, polished, admired. Daniel loosened his tie. "You look tense," Amara said. "You should relax. Tomorrow is another big day." He nodded absently and walked toward his study. Behind the closed door, Daniel sat heavily in his chair. He placed his elbows on the desk and covered his face with his hands. The silence pressed against him, loud and accusing. He remembered another kind of silence. The silence of their old apartment when the power was cut. The silence of nights when his mother returned late, exhausted but still smiled. The silence of hunger that she never complained about. Daniel opened his eyes and stared at the wall. Why was she still struggling? He had sent money in the past, once or twice. He had assumed that was enough. He never asked questions. Never followed up. Never visited. "I'm busy," he always told himself. She understands. But seeing her today shattered that lie. A soft knock came at the door. Amara stepped in without waiting for permission. "You've been quiet since earlier," she said. "That woman, she'll be fine. People like that always find a way." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That woman is my mother," he said. Amara paused, then shrugged. "Daniel, we can't save everyone. And honestly, her lifestyle doesn't fit into ours." Her words landed like a slap. "Not everything is about image," Daniel replied quietly. Amara laughed lightly. "Everything is about image. That's how this world works. You didn't come this far to go backward." Backward. Daniel looked at her and wondered when love had turned into calculation. Later that night, Daniel lay awake beside Amara, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. His mind wandered back to the past, memories he had buried deep. He saw himself as a teenager, watching his mother count crumpled bills at the kitchen table. He remembered promising her that one day, she would never have to struggle again. He remembered her smile when he got his first job. Her tears when he moved away. Her voice on the phone, always cheerful, always reassuring. "I'm fine, my son. Don't worry about me." Daniel reached for his phone and scrolled through his contacts. His mother's number was there. His thumb hovered over it. Then he locked the screen and placed the phone down. Fear crept in. Not fear of poverty, but fear of facing what he had ignored for so long. The next morning, Daniel arrived at his office earlier than usual. Meetings blurred together. Numbers danced on screens, but none of it made sense. His assistant noticed his distraction. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," Daniel replied automatically. But he wasn't. Every successful handshake felt empty. Every compliment felt undeserved. By midday, Daniel made a decision he couldn't ignore any longer. He canceled his remaining meetings. Ignoring the confused looks, he grabbed his car keys and left the building. As he drove back toward the older part of the city, his heart pounded harder with every mile. He didn't know what he would say. He didn't know how his mother would react. But one thing was clear. The silence he had lived with for years was finally screaming. And Daniel Okri was about to confront the part of his life he had tried so hard to leave behind, whether he was ready or not. Daniel slowed the car as the neighborhood changed around him. Tall buildings gave way to older stores. Smooth roads turned rough. The air itself felt different, heavier, slower, filled with stories that had never made it into business magazines. Daniel hadn't driven through this part of the city in years, yet everything felt painfully familiar. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if I'm already too late? He pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the road ahead. When he reached the roadside market, his heart dropped. Mama Ifunanya was no longer there. The spot where she had stood was empty. Only a few scattered crates and a damp patch on the ground where melted ice had leaked from her cooler. Panic rose in Daniel's chest. He parked quickly and stepped out of the car. An older man sitting nearby looked up. "You looking for someone?" he asked. "My mother," Daniel replied, his voice tight. She was selling bottled water here earlier. The man nodded. Ah, the elderly woman. She left not long ago. Said she was tired. She usually walks home. Which way? Daniel asked. The man pointed down a narrow street. Daniel didn't hesitate. He followed the direction, his polished shoes hitting cracked pavement, his breath uneven. The farther he walked, the more his world stripped itself down. No assistance, no titles, no protection. Just a son searching for his mother. He spotted her a few minutes later. Mama Ifeanyi was resting on a low concrete step outside a small apartment building. The cooler sat beside her, half empty now. She wiped her face with a handkerchief, her movements slow and careful. Daniel stopped short. Seeing her up close was harder than seeing her from the car. Her hair was more gray than he remembered. Her shoulders looked smaller, weighed down by years of effort. Yet there was still dignity in the way she sat, her back straight despite the fatigue. "Mama," Daniel said softly. She looked up. For a brief moment, her eyes showed confusion. Then recognition. Her lips parted slightly. "Daniel," the way she said his name, soft, surprised, almost unbelieving, cut straight through him. "Yes," he replied, stepping closer. "It's me." She stood slowly, brushing dust from her skirt. "I didn't know you were in this area," she said, smiling gently, as if nothing was wrong. As if she hadn't just been selling water under the sun. Daniel swallowed hard. "I saw you earlier," he confessed. "On the road." She nodded. "Ah, that explains it." Her calm made his guilt heavier. "I should have stopped," Daniel said. "I should have come to you." She waved a hand dismissively. "You're a busy man. I understand." "No," Daniel said firmly. "You shouldn't have to understand this." Silence fell between them. Daniel looked at the cooler. "Why are you still doing this?" She followed his gaze. "It helps," she said simply. "I like to stay active. And it pays the bills." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. I thought you were okay." Mama Ifeanyi smiled sadly. "I am okay, my son. I wake up. I work. I sleep. That is okay." Her definition of okay shattered him. He knelt in front of her without thinking. "Mama, I failed you," he said, his voice breaking. "I promised you a better life, and I walked away." Her eyes widened. "Daniel, stand up. People are watching." "I don't care," he replied. "I care about you." Tears welled in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. "You became everything you dreamed of," she said softly. "That is enough for me." "It's not enough for me," Daniel replied. "Not anymore." He picked up the cooler. It was heavier than it looked. The weight shocked him and shamed him. "You won't carry this again," he said. Mama Ifeanyi touched his arm. "Life humbles all of us, my son." Daniel shook his head. "Then let it humble me, not you." He helped her up and guided her toward his car. As they walked, Daniel felt something shift inside him. The fear, the guilt, the silence. They were still there, but now they were mixed with resolve. For the first time in years, Daniel Okri wasn't running from his past. He was walking straight into it. And he had no idea how this decision would change everything that awaited him at home. Daniel drove in silence. Mama Ifeanyi sat beside him in the passenger seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She stared out the window, watching the city change as they moved farther away from the old neighborhood. The buildings grew taller, the roads smoother, the cars shinier. She shifted slightly in her seat. "Daniel," she said gently, "you don't have to take me far. My place is not much, but it is home." Daniel shook his head. "Not today, Mama." She studied his face but said nothing more. When the car turned into the gated estate, Mama Ifeanyi's eyes widened. The gates opened silently, revealing long, clean roads lined with palm trees and manicured lawns. She straightened in her seat, suddenly aware of the difference between this world and hers. "Is this where you live?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Daniel replied. The car stopped in front of the mansion. Mama Ifeanyi stepped out slowly and looked up at the towering building. For a moment she said nothing. Then she smiled, a proud, gentle smile. "You have done well," she said. Her words, meant as praise, felt like another weight on Daniel's heart. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. The walls were bright, the floors polished, everything arranged perfectly, but nothing felt warm. Mama Ifeanyi walked carefully, afraid to touch anything. "This place is very big," she said softly. "It's just space," Daniel replied. "It doesn't mean much if it's empty." Before she could respond, footsteps echoed from the staircase. Amara appeared. She froze when she saw Mama Ifeanyi. Daniel felt the tension instantly. Mama, Daniel said. This is Amara, my wife. Mama Ifunanya smiled and nodded respectfully. It is good to finally meet you. Amara forced a thin smile. Hello. Her eyes moved quickly over Mama Ifunanya's clothes, her worn shoes, the small bag she carried. Disapproval flashed across her face before she masked it. What's going on? Amara asked Daniel quietly. I brought my mother home, he replied. Amara's smile vanished. Home? Daniel, we didn't discuss this. I didn't think it required discussion. Mama Ifunanya shifted uncomfortably. If I am disturbing. You're not, Daniel said firmly. Please sit down. She obeyed, settling on the edge of the couch. Amara crossed her arms. How long is this visit supposed to last? Daniel met her gaze. She's staying. The room fell silent. Amara laughed, sharp and incredulous. You're joking. I'm serious. This house is not set up for that, Amara said. And besides, people will ask questions. Daniel exhaled slowly. People always ask questions. They don't live here. Amara turned to Mama Ifunanya. I hope you understand that this is unexpected. Mama Ifunanya lowered her eyes. I do not wish to cause trouble. Daniel felt anger rise. You're not trouble. You're my mother. That night, Mama Ifunanya was given a guest room. Beautiful, spacious, untouched. She sat on the bed, hands resting on her knees, unsure of where she belonged in this new world. Downstairs, Daniel and Amara argued in hushed voices. You're choosing emotion over logic, Amara said. I'm choosing responsibility, Daniel replied. You're ruining the balance of our life. No, Daniel said quietly. I'm correcting it. Later, when the house finally went quiet, Daniel stood outside his mother's door. He heard her praying softly inside. He closed his eyes. For the first time, the mansion felt like a house with a heartbeat. But Daniel knew the hardest part was still ahead. Because bringing his mother home was only the beginning. And not everyone under that roof was ready for the truth to settle in. Morning light crept gently into the house, touching corners that had always looked perfect but never felt alive. For the first time, the mansion woke up to the sound of movement that wasn't scheduled or rehearsed. Mama Ifunanya was already awake. She stood in the kitchen, unsure of herself, studying the modern appliances like a visitor in a museum. When Daniel walked in, he paused at the doorway. The sight caught him off guard, his mother humming softly as she carefully rinsed a cup, the same way she used to in their old apartment. Mama, he said gently, you don't have to do that. She smiled. Old habits do not disappear easily. Daniel pulled out a chair. Sit with me. They ate together in silence, but it was a comfortable one. Not the heavy silence that had haunted Daniel before. This one felt healing. Later that day, Daniel made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He cleared his schedule. No meetings. No calls. No appearances. Instead, he drove his mother around the city. He showed her his office building, the park nearby, the places his life had taken him. Mama Ifunanya listened with pride, not envy. She asked questions, laughed at his small stories, and reminded him of things he had forgotten about himself. For the first time in years, Daniel felt whole. That evening, Amara approached him in the living room. Her confidence from before was gone, replaced by frustration mixed with uncertainty. This can't continue like this, she said. Everything feels different. Daniel nodded. It is different. You've changed, Amara said. Daniel looked at her calmly. No, I remembered. They talked for a long time that night. About values. About priorities. About what truly mattered when no one was watching. Some conversations don't end in agreement, but they end in clarity. By morning, the truth was unavoidable. Amara wanted a life built on appearances. Daniel wanted a life built on meaning. They chose peace over pretense. In the weeks that followed, Daniel made quiet but powerful changes. He moved Mama Ifunanya into a warm, modest home closer to the city, comfortable, peaceful, and filled with light. He visited often. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. But she never carried heavy loads again. Daniel also began something new, no announcements, no headlines. A small community program that helped elderly vendors transition into safer, easier work. He didn't put his name on it. He didn't need applause. He already had something better. One afternoon, as Daniel sat with his mother on her porch, Mama Ifunanya looked at him and said, "You are lighter now." He smiled. "So are you." She nodded. That is what happens when the heart is no longer divided. Daniel leaned back, listening to the quiet sounds of the neighborhood. For the first time, success didn't feel loud. It felt steady, honest. He had learned the lesson no school ever taught him. That a man is not measured by how high he rises, but by how faithfully he lifts those who once carried him. And in honoring that truth, Daniel Okri finally found the kind of wealth that never fades. Success isn't measured by what you own, but by who you remember. When Daniel forgot the woman who carried his dreams, he lost himself. And when he chose gratitude over pride, he found real wealth. No matter how far you go in life, never be ashamed of your roots. Because the hands that lifted you first deserve honor forever.